Hello, I'm Steve Carr, and our good friends at Dunlop stopped by the booth today to ask some general tube questions. Hopefully I can help out. Well, a lot of people are curious about the general power tube types that guitar amps use. There are 6L6s, 6V6s. Those are kind of in the American family of tubes. Then EL34s and EL84s, which are British tubes. So generally thinking, the American style tubes you'll find in Fender amps typically, and have a very even and balanced sound with a lot of low end and a lot of spank to them. While British tubes, EL34, EL84, you might find in Marshalls or in Voxes. And again, these are generalities, but those tubes tend to have more of an upper mid-range push and have a bit of a grind to them when you really hit them. Maybe a little less bass, a little more forward, perhaps more rocking. But it's important to note that, depending on how the amplifier is designed, you can get American sounds from a British style tube and British sounds from American tubes. But those generalities are a good place to start, at least. All right, well, there's a lot of confusion about Class A and Class AB, and I'll attempt to clear it up as best I can. In Class A, the simplest way to look at that is the power tube. And again, we're talking about power tubes here. In Class A, the power tube is functioning all the time. It's always conducting signal. So anytime you have a single-ended amp, which would be one power tube, like a Fender Champ or our Mercury amp, because it's one tube, it's always on. Now, there's something called push-pull, where you have two tubes working together, kind of in like a seesaw situation, back and forth. And those you can configure to be Class A, where they're both always working on, or for more efficiency, Class AB, for example, where at some point of high input, the tubes start passing the signal back and forth. One will shut off, the other one picks it up, that one shuts off, back and forth. And the thing that you get with that is efficiency. So you can run the tubes a lot harder and get more output watts because they have a chance to cool down when they're shut off. The sonic difference with Class A amps, where they're always on, they tend to be a little juicier sounding in the mid-range, a little more kind of having this kind of curled up, sprung, ready-to-go sound, and they tend to compress a bit faster because they're already, in a way, maxed out. They're already on all the time. The nice thing about Class AB, which you find in more powerful amps, that Fender Twin we mentioned, Marshalls, is that when you really hit them, they're able to kind of cool down and recover from that. So they tend to sound really punchy and really taut and not as compressed. The thing that's interesting is there's been a lot of hype about Class A, Class AB, and really, from the Carr Amps perspective, I don't know that those are very important distinctions. It's the sound of the amp. There's so much about the circuitry and the approach that really are kind of bigger factors than what class it is. One of the things that I've heard people ask about is with our low wattage amps, why we do not use very low wattage speakers. And there are some great ones out there. But what I found in our designs is I try to make the amp, whether it's overdriven or clean, just so dynamic that a low wattage speaker, even let's say with the Mercury that's 8 watts, if we use a 15 watt speaker, I found those just really can't carry the low end the amp is capable of or the dynamic range. So we use a 75 watt speaker, but it actually sounds to me much better than a low wattage speaker for that. So our line is really varied. We start with the Raleigh, which is a 3 watt amp, a great at-home amp. In fact, records amazingly well. ZZ Top recorded some of the songs in the new album with the Raleigh, the little 3-watter. We go up to the Mercury, which is a very, very popular amp for us. A single, Class A EL34. The amp has reverb and a 3-position boost and a built-in attenuator. So you can get clean Fendery sounds, pushed box sounds, kind of 70s modified Marshall sounds, almost at any listening level, and it's real tube overdrive. People have loved our Rambler amp, which is a fantastic Class A 6L6 amp with reverb and tremolo, but it's amazingly dimensional. So any pedal you use with it, every bit of what that pedal's doing comes through and shows there with the amp. That's a wonderful amp. Our new Impala amp which is a more powerful 6L6 Class AB amp. We talked a bit about that. 44 clean watts, amazingly punchy. Last year we jumped into the overdrive market with the Bloke. The Bloke is a different kind of amp. It sounds huge in a 112 package, 2 EL34s, makes about 50 watts. It has a single drive control, but then 2 masters, which are voiced differently, which you can channel switch between. The sound has a bit of a modified 70s Marshall thing going on in the one master, and then more of an 80s, almost Silver Jubilee, wonderful, smooth singing distortion in the other channel. Well, many of you, I started playing guitar at a young age and just loved doing it, played in bands in high school and college. And more I just became fascinated by tube gear. And, I would go to repairmen and try to learn what I could. And eventually just started building my own. And for me, the fun is in making something. Putting your hands on it, soldering, and then seeing what you got. Prototyping is the most fun by far because I'm always changing things, and I don't know what it's going to sound like. I turn it on and, it's good or it's bad, and I move on from there. But it's all about making and building. And if you look at our construction methods, you can see, in a way, they're the most labor-intensive, but the flip side of that to me is they're the most fun.